Welcome back, everybody. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. If you're heading down to the shore this weekend, there is a special treat, and it's better than a saltwater taffy. Bob Saget at the Borgata this Saturday, 9 p.m. The legend in the comedian industry, Bob Saget, is kind enough to give us a few minutes right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Bob, thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
Are you kidding? I'll never let go. I'll be on for hours, whatever you want.
Well, I appreciate it. So this is actually pretty funny that you're on my show because many years ago, the Bob and Sam show, or the Sam and Bob show, as Sam was explaining it to me at Pigpen Coffee House, my father, Bob Gelb, was the opening act for you guys, and he was the guy that burned his face off practically, and you guys actually met up this year at CBS when you came in for a surprise sales meeting. So real quickly, tell the audience about the opening act. A guy that used to spit fire in your comedy shows.
Well, I was doing many different things at the time. I was doing stand-up. I was doing comedy groups at University of Pennsylvania and the Coffee House, Harry's Coffee House. And Bob, your dad, was gracious enough to do his juggling, and his juggling involved putting lighter fluid in his mouth and shooting it out of his mouth, setting it on fire with bowling ball pins as he juggled. And what he didn't know was in the coffee house at the U of P dorms, the ceilings were very low and asbestos. And so the flames went up at the ceiling, came back, burned him in the face, and he went off screaming. And we had to continue the show. We basically didn't care at all. We saw that he wasn't burnt. There was no charring flesh. It wasn't like Walking Dead. And I just yelled out the Beatles quote from the White Album, "I got blisters on me fingers," and because I touched the ceiling, which was burning hot. And he was fine. And unfortunately, this past year, I got to see him. I was up in New York doing a play. I was doing Hand to God, this Broadway play. And I got to see him at a CBS sales meeting. I just walked in because sometimes I act like a cocky little so-and-so. And so-and-so, who says that? But I walked in, and he said, I'm Bob Gelb. I said, no way you're not. You're not. You can't be. And he went, yeah, I am. And he obviously burned his hair off also. So, but it was really great to see him. And it was kind of emotional because it takes you back. Well, you'll find out when you're my age. I'm 60. I see people that are 60, and I go like, oh, my God, what the hell? Because it happens so quick. But my life's unusual because I go off and I do Fuller House, and it's 30 years later. And, you know, I mean, compared to most people on the earth, no matter whether people think I look good or not, I still look better than most of the average 60-year-olds who look like they're about to fall into a pit. But cut to, you know, I hang up with you and I fall into a pit. But it's just been it's a very interesting trip to run into old friends from the stopping ground, which is why I love coming back to Philly. I need to play another Philly date. I'm planning on, I don't know what I'll do in the next year or so, because I'm working on a new special. So I go to the Borgata many times, you know, at least every year. But I've been there, I don't know how many, but a lot. And I go there, and I always have new stuff because I'm always working on new stuff. So it's going to be real fun Saturday night when I go there. I'm really looking forward to it.
When I was talking with Sam this morning, Sam was telling me how he never thought about this until now, how you guys were lucky that the entire building didn't burn down that night. I guess the show must have really had to go on that night.
It really did, and I don't think we could have burned it down because it was a thing where sprinklers would have gone off. It was the U of P didn't mess around when it came to the dorms. When you got rich kids staying in there, you got to have the sprinklers because you got to put out your rich kids. You can't have rich kids on fire. And Bob ran out. I took him right to the emergency room, and he was fine. He was like, I think it was third-degree burns. So it wasn't that big a deal, you know, and it wasn't us, so we were fine. And then we kept doing bits. I mean, my ex-wife was in the bit. She sang a song called I'm a Jap, Jewish American Princess, and Sam and I did bits. We did a bit called the $10,000 Tuition Pyramid, which was taken off of the Dick Clark game show. Ended up doing that at Penn in the All-Star Review with Mark Pfeffer and all the guys, Joe Sayag, all the mixed nuts that are my friends that are just really, really funny guys, you know, that are about 6 guys that get together. And they still do corporate gigs, and Sam's a dentist, and guys go off and do their law, and they practice, and Rex, and I mean, all these really great guys. That changed. My life changed. I left LA, left Philly, left Temple University, graduated, went to LA, and then just started doing stand-up, struggling for 8 years for free, working at the Comedy Store and the Improv, and then started getting on the road, and then studied acting, and then did a lot to try to get a job, and then finally got a couple of guest appearances, and then wound up on a CBS show, and then wound up on Full House, and then the video show happened accidentally, and then it's about a career, and then it's about the art of stand up and the art of other stuff. I'm getting ready to direct a movie called Jake that I'm acting in and starring in, and it's just it's a huge amount of work. It's more work than anybody really thinks it is, and the gifts of it are often, they really outweigh so much what the hard work is. When people complain in show business, they complain if they work or they're not working. But for me, it's been really quite fortunate, but it is a lot of work. Like, I'm going off on the road tomorrow, and I had to stop at the doctor just now and make sure I don't have bronchitis, because I got to perform. So everything's got to be perfect. You really got to take care of yourself. And this will be my last interview until I perform on Thursday night. So that's good. I'll be on voice rest for a couple days.
Well, we appreciate you coming on with us as we're talking to Bob Saget, who joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. And I love, because I was a guy that went to Temple. I just recently graduated. Now I'm here at Fox Sports 920, the Jersey. So we have that in common. But when you were at Temple, I got honored for a scholarship by the Philadelphia Sports Writers Association. But you won a Student Academy Award at Temple. So how was life for you when you were at Temple University?
It was really good. All I did was rob the equipment room all the time. I found out who ran it, because Temple.
I've been there.
Temple was actually a school where you got to do your practicing for what your career would be. There wasn't really practical application at an Ivy League school, which I couldn't get into Penn anyway. But Temple, I was able to switch my major from pre-med because I got a D in chemistry and knew nothing about anything. And I found my calling, which was that I loved film, and I made a documentary about my nephew who had his face reconstructed, and it won the Student Oscar, and he narrated it, and there was a special thing called Through Adam's Eyes, and it changed my life. I mean, I moved to L.A., went up at the Comedy Store. Owner said, you can work here whenever you want. I said, well, okay. I quit grad school at USC, which I'd gotten into, and I decided to just do everything. I did everything at the same time. I never really chose one discipline. I took acting classes for 6 years with a guy named Daryl Hickman. I did the Groundlings workshop, which is similar to Second City. Groundlings is where a lot of people came out of, Phil Hartman and Mike Myers and John Lovitz. Well, you can't have everything, but it was just really that was a Lovitz dig. Sorry, but it's been all the stuff that I did to learn is what got me my first jobs that paid nothing, and then by the time I was 30, I'd done enough stuff that prepared me to get a couple good jobs.
Yeah, I take a look back at it, and everything really got started at Temple. Would you ever want to be their commencement speaker? Because the person that was our commencement speaker this past year was just so boring.
Who was that?
I don't even know. He actually got up there and he said, "You all probably forget my name," and we all did. That was his only funny line. But, man, it was some brutal stuff. I had a professor text me.
I've been wanting to do it.
Really?
To do it. And people have said, oh, my God, he's turned us down. I've never been asked. I have never been asked to be the commencement speaker. We know someone else in history who they gave a doctorate to, but I can't even get a commencement speech, and I don't drug people and knock them out to have sex with them, so I don't know why I can't be eligible. It seems like I would give a lovely speech. I learned a lot from Temple. But it's up to the faculty. Maybe the checks I've written just aren't big enough. So I think that's I don't know the reason, but I'd be honored. I mean, it's my alma mater, and it always will be. So you can't really take back your alma mater unless you went to multi-schools or you were homeschooled for your college.
Well, I'll start the campaign for you. I'll talk to some folks that I know at Temple, but I will say this. My professor actually told me, he texted me during the ceremony, he goes, they got to get this guy off stage for the commencement speaker this past year as we're talking to Bob Saget. So while we're talking about the early part of your career, the Filmmakers film was another part that you had a great involvement in, and your backup singers were the Sister Sledge. How'd that come about?
Well, that was because they were in my class with me, and I had a crush on Joni Sledge. But that never happened, and it was the worst film ever. In fact, when I did Through Adam's Eyes, I got some really nice recognition in L.A., and I met Steven Spielberg, and he said, send that film to my office. I want to watch it. And at that time, there was no videotape. And I sent it to him on 16 millimeters, so he was going to watch it during a screening. And then I gave him that, but then I gave him a Filmmakers film. Now, you're not a 20... You shouldn't be a 22-year-old student making a film called a Filmmakers film because you're setting yourself up for disaster. The only funny thing about it was that it was a half hour long. It was in color. I was the only student that had printed his film that year, which means you go and you take your sound and your film and you mesh them together optically at a lab in New York. And we totally guerrilla style filmed in front of Rockefeller Center and all through New York. I had Sister Sledge in an accompanying car, and 4 girls sang with me. They were so sweet. And I just did my best to sing in an all-white suit, Saturday Night Fever style. And it is the worst thing ever made. It is reprehensible. The only funny thing about it is that I made fun of the interview, which is when someone interviews somebody, all the cutaways. I just kept cutting to my foot, side of an ear, whatever. I would cut to different things because people always cut away to hands while people are talking. And so I was just making fun of the form. People have done that since, but I'd like to think I was one of the pioneers of doing that in the worst film ever made, ever.
But that earlier work, it makes you better when you get with more experience. I'd have to imagine. Like, you probably learned a lot from that film, right?
Yes, I learned don't do that. And also that my professor, I had Professor Jim Ambandos at Temple, who is no longer with us, who was a remarkable man, and he was going blind, and he was a film person, and he loved film, and he was incredibly enthusiastic, and one of my best teachers I ever had. And he said to me, I submit to you this film is not done. And I said, but it's printed. I'm not going back. I can't afford it. I'm not, I was working in a deli at Cedarbrook Mall and the Pantry Pride. I can't afford to go back to New York and have it reprinted, recut it, and everything. And that was no excuse, because the truth is, when you want to make a movie, you go to the end of the earth to make it great. And I've learned that more and more, that you have to make it. It's your baby. So I've learned that it is an odd life and death experience to make something great. You really got to take your art incredibly seriously. Like, when I do stand-up just in the Borgata, it's not just at the Borgata. It's important to me. I can't do a show there that doesn't mean something to those people, that they don't come back 2 years later and go, oh, my God, do you remember that happened last year? And I go, yeah, that was crazy, wasn't it? It's like remembering a great date you went on. It's just it's really, really important to me, everything that I do, that I give 1,000%, So that's what you learn when you make things that aren't good. And I made plenty of things that aren't good.
And you can see Bob Saget this Saturday, 9 p.m. at the Borgata down at the Shore. And let's get into Fuller House right now. You get the band back together, and I follow you on Snapchat, and I see your Snapchats with John. It seems like you guys haven't missed the beat at all after all those years off.
No, we're having a great time. It's silly. I mean, we're having such a great time that, the night after we shot Fuller House, I went to dinner with John and his girlfriend and my girlfriend, and we all just kind of hung out and went to dinner and had some laughs. I mean, it's just, we are literally nothing but affection. And Dave is just incredibly funny. I wish people could see the Dave we see, which is this guy that's a flatulating monster, That's hilarious. There's nothing he does that isn't funny. And then the girls have grown up to, Candace is 40, I'm 100, and so it's just, so I said Fullest House will just be me on a windowsill, just in an urn.
I grew up watching that show in elementary school. Anytime someone would get on up there and say something rude in front of the class, everyone would turn at them and say, how rude. And you look at your career, you go from Danny Tanner, and now you're a comedian that is completely dirty, and you see all the stuff on Entourage and all that stuff.
Well, I'm not completely dirty. That's, whenever anybody tries to peg me and nail me, they're just wrong.
Yeah.
Because I change. So, like, people go, for about 10 years, people had one thing to say. Oh, my God, how could you be the clean father? Why aren't you like that on your stand-up? It's like, I don't know what they expect me to dust bust the Windex set.
You're exactly right.
But then as my stand-up progressed, yes, I did an HBO special called That Ain't Right, where I dropped F-bombs a lot. And that is really what made it dirty. And I do a lot of below-the-waist jokes because I find reprehensible what happens in politics and how people fight over religion. So I don't find humor in that. So I go right to my unit where things are safe. And I just do what I find funny. Rodney Dangerfield was a friend of mine. He made me laugh with that kind of humor. Richard Pryor was an idol of mine. I got to know him. I got to do a movie with him. He just talked the truth. A lot of the truth wasn't stuff that your average everyday person would want to hear. But these aren't guys that were on family shows either. So if a kid grows up and they go, oh, my God, what's he doing in this? Oh, my God, I can't believe it. It's just called let people follow their own voice. And, if somebody wants to write different kinds of music at a different point in their life, you're supposed to embrace it. People don't know what change is because they don't do it themselves. So that's for me, I won't be that different. My stand-up has only so many ways to carve my act. But I've got new songs and I've got new stuff. But it's not really dirty. When people see it, they go, I thought you were going to be dirtier. They're like disappointed now. It's like, I said, yeah, it's a soft R. It's not a hard R.
But that's our PC society now, where the word dirty gives a negative connotation. But really what it is for you is you're brilliant. You're great. You're funny. You make people laugh. And that's the beauty of it. Getting back to Fuller House, the Olsen twins are not involved in it. What happened there with the Olsen twins?
Well, they're fashion people. They don't want to act. They haven't wanted to act for 10 years. And I've said this a few times lately. I mean, it's like Shirley Temple. She was America's sweetheart. She made a fortune. She was treated great. She decided I never want to act again. I feel like I was robbed of my childhood is, I guess, how she felt about it. She became an ambassador to the U.S. People should be able to do what they want to do. It's better than becoming an obscure has-been where you're doing, or whatever happened to, and you're trying to get chicken commercials, So they just had amazing fashion sense, and their clothing line's ridiculous. I don't understand when people always go, why don't they want to do Fuller House? Oh, my God. And rather than, holy crap, did you see that purse? But I guess you got to really love that fashion in order to understand that they're doing something significant. And I love them. So they're friends of mine. So.
And didn't one of them come to see your Broadway show, Hand to God, right?
Both of them did, yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
I'm close with both of them. I love them both. And it's a separate relationship. It isn't like I go out with and even if it was, I mean, my daughters are friends with them. And the whole cast is families. I'm kind of at the fulcrum of it, so I've got to live forever.
I got two more with you as we're talking to Bob Saget. You can see him Saturday, 9 p.m. at the Borgata. So Sam was telling me, two final things that Sam were telling me before we hang on up, that you were originally, when you went to Temple, you wanted to pursue a career in pre-med. Had that happen where you decided to not go pre-med, and now you're a genius and a legend in the comedian industry?
I just realized I wasn't any good. I mean, I got D's in chemistry, so there really isn't anything to figure out. When a door doesn't open, you can't go through it because it's closed. It's like trying to go back into the market once they turned off the sensor on the thing. I just sucked. And I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to make people laugh. I mean, I wanted to make people happy. I wanted to make them feel good. But then I realized, what I'm trying to say is I realized that making people laugh does have a value, so it's not like it's something bad.
Now, before we let you run, Sam wanted me to tell you one more thing from the Bob and Sam or the Sam and Bob show back in the day. He wanted me to say to you that as great as you are as a comic, the one bad thing about you is that you were an awful athlete growing up, the two of you. Were you not a good athlete growing up?
I was a complete spaz. There is nothing good that can be said about my athletics. I'm a better athlete now than I was then, and I'm not good now. But I mean, it was pretty sad to when I lived in Norfolk, Virginia, in between Philly. I was born in Philly. My dad was a food fair pantry pride, so we moved a lot. And I literally grabbed the ball one time and ran the wrong way on the football field. So.
Well, we have all had friends that have been there. I wasn't one of those athletes, but I had a lot of friends that have shot the ball at the wrong basket and everything. But Bob Saget, this was great. I hope everyone goes see Bob at the Borgata this Saturday at 9 p.m. A mini homecoming to some sorts down at the shore for one Bob Saget. Bob, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Please give my best to you, Dad.
Will do. Thanks so much.
And then tell him if he can come to the show, I'll give him some free lotion for his face.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Bob.
Have a great one.
You too.